Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephania Cox. Here are today's top stories. President Biden is being sued by 12 states. This over one of many executive orders he signed on Inauguration Day. The Biden administration is doing something unheard of at the border. A sheriff in Texas says Biden's policies have left the border unsecured and are strengthening criminal cartels. Will Mitch McConnell retire during his current term? The Senate Minority Leader has reportedly compiled a list of successors in case of a vacancy. The CDC issues gathering guidelines for those already vaccinated. They've given the okay for maskless gatherings in some cases. A new bride in Hong Kong explains how Chinese authorities tore her family apart. Her husband is one of many pro-democracy activists now detained there, stripped of their freedom. Earlier today, President Biden signed 2 executive orders on gender issues. Press Secretary Jen Psaki and 2 members of Biden's new Gender Policy Council explained what's in the orders. NTD's Christina Kim reports.
The executive director of the council, Jennifer Klein, said these 2 orders together represent the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to advance gender equality and equity.
The first executive order will formally establish the Gender Policy Council within the Executive Office of the President.
Co-chair Julissa Reynoso described how the Gender Policy Council will try to achieve equality.
By aggressively protecting the rights and unique needs of those who experience multiple forms of discrimination, including people of color and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people.
The first executive order says the co-chairs of the Gender Policy Council must submit to Biden a government-wide strategy to, quote, address gender in policies, programs, and budgets. They also need to provide an annual report to measure the progress. And there will be a special assistant to the president and an advisor on the council to address gender-based violence. They also explained what's in the second executive order.
The second executive order that the president signed this morning focuses on advancing policies to guarantee education free from sexual violence.
This order will review all existing regulations and orders, including Trump-era changes to Title IX, the federal law that protects sex-based discrimination in education. The previous standard bolstered due process rights for the accused. When asked by a reporter if that part would be revoked, Klein said all people deserve due process, and the Secretary of Education is directed to review each piece of previous policies before deciding what parts need to be revised or taken away. Christina Kim, NTD News.
12 states are suing President Biden over a climate change executive order. Missouri is leading the charge and says the order could severely impact the state's economies. Arkansas, Arizona, Indiana, Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Tennessee have all signed the suit. Missouri's AG says manufacturing, agriculture, and energy production are essential to the state's economy and provide thousands of jobs. He says Biden's order will leave those workers in the dust. The lawsuit says Biden's order could cause trillions of dollars of damage to the U.S. economy. It also says the order threatens the separation of powers under the Constitution that would have federal power intrude into every aspect of Americans' lives, from their cars to their refrigerators and homes to their grocery and electricity bills. The White House has said the order is to protect public health and the environment, as well as our national treasures. And we've reached out to the White House for comment on that. And pro-life evangelicals for Biden are telling the president that they feel used and betrayed by him. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
The pro-life group said they publicly endorsed Biden's candidacy with the understanding that he would engage with them on abortion issues, especially the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment stops U.S. taxpayer dollars from going to abortion services, but now it's excluded from the COVID relief package. Pro-life evangelicals for Biden are saying they feel used and betrayed. They sent this letter to the president on Sunday. We are very disappointed about the COVID-19 relief package's exclusion of the Hyde Amendment, a long-standing bipartisan policy that prevents taxpayer funding for abortion. We're even more upset that the Biden administration is supporting this bill. Their letter drew unsympathetic responses from a number of religious conservatives, including pro-life activist Lila Rose. She said on Twitter, it was extremely naive to trust them, referring to the Biden administration, and called Biden a master deceiver. NTD spoke with Rose last month. She said many Americans aren't aware of the Biden administration's extreme abortion positions because Biden uses his faith as a cover.
The president is using the Christian religion as a cover for his extreme policies and his promotion of abortion. And that is simply the worst kind of lie.
Last month, Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked if the White House could guarantee pro-life Americans that their tax dollars would not go towards abortion through the relief package. But Psaki refused to answer.
As I've just noted, 3/4 of the public supports the components of the package, wants to see the pandemic get under control, wants to see people put back to work, vaccines and arms. So I think that answers your question. Okay, we're going to move on.
According to a January 27th Knights of Columbus Morris poll, 58% of Americans polled oppose taxpayer-funded abortions in the U.S. Pro-life Evangelicals for Biden is urging Biden to honor his commitment to them and to immediately demand the House apply the Hyde Amendment to the relief package. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
A sheriff in Texas claims the Biden administration is doing something that's never been done before in U.S. history. It's contacting asylum seekers who've been rejected and encouraging them to reapply. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the details.
According to Texas Sheriff A.J. Louderback, the U.S. southern border is more open now than ever in U.S. history. He says new policies by the Biden administration are sending a message to the world that our borders are open. He says Americans will have to pay a price for that. What's more, Louderback says the current administration is now doing something unprecedented in regards to asylum seekers.
This is the first time in U.S. history where the federal government has gone back on rejected asylee applicants in the last year or so, and are reaching out to them to bring them back into the United States and reapply again for asylee status under the Biden administration.
Louderback is the sheriff for Jackson County. It's on a main migrant route from Central America through the Rio Grande Valley and into Houston. He said over the last 2 years when Trump was in office, the border was more secure than it had been in half a century, partly because of Trump's Remain in Mexico program.
So the Trump administration simply said, no, we're going to do migrant protection protocols as we're allowed to do by law, and we're going to do the asylum process, but you're going to have to stay in another country and then make application into the U.S. and then be brought in into an orderly fashion.
But Louderback says Biden completely changed that and is letting migrants into the country, whether they are seeking asylum or not. The sheriff says for the last 3 weeks, over 1,000 people a day are coming across the Rio Grande Valley into the country. And he says the migrants have to pay the Gulf Cartel $250 US to get to the border. Louderback does the math.
You're looking at $250,000 a day coming in and funding the cartel for its future violence and future enhancement of all things criminal that go along here in Texas and the United States. So fundamentally, what we've done is promote this. We're allowing the cartels to fund themselves, enrich themselves at the cost of these people.
Louderback says Americans should be concerned about this, and a public outcry can help bring about a resolution. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Greyhound is calling on the Department of Homeland Security to prove that all detainees released by ICE test negative for the virus before they board its buses. Greyhound CEO David Leach says the bus line's top priority is the health and safety of employees and passengers, and that this is an issue of public safety. Leach sent a letter to DHS last week just as it was revealed at least 108 illegal immigrants released in Texas had tested positive for the virus. Leach is asking the department for assistance with a potential surge in migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. He says with the pandemic, the company doesn't have enough buses or drivers to cope and says they will need emergency funding. The Supreme Court dismissed former President Trump's final election lawsuit, which challenged the results in Wisconsin. The court didn't explain why they refused this challenge, and there wasn't any mention of dissenting justices. The other two remaining appeals from former President Trump were dismissed on February 22nd. Separately, the Supreme Court also dismissed the election lawsuit filed by lawyer Lynn Wood. There was no comment on why that was denied either. And Mitch McConnell seems to be choosing his successors already. The Senate Minority Leader is reportedly working with his home state's legislature to alter how senators are appointed in the case of a vacancy. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Kentucky Republicans told The Intercept that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has compiled a list of successors in case he does not finish his current term. He is also working with the Kentucky State Legislature to alter the procedure of how senators are appointed in the case of a vacancy. McConnell's list of successors reportedly include Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN Kelly Craft, and Kentucky Secretary of State Michael Adams. All three have strong personal ties to the Senate Minority Leader. McConnell is 79 years old and has been representing Kentucky in the U.S. Senate for the past 36 years. According to Kentucky law, the governor has the power to appoint a senator in the case of a vacancy. If McConnell were to exit the Senate within his current term, Kentucky's Democrat governor would choose his successor. The proposed Bill 228 in the Kentucky Senate would alter the appointment procedure. If passed, the governor will have to choose from a list of 3 candidates presented by the political party of the senator who left the vacancy. Republicans currently hold veto-proof majorities in both chambers of the Kentucky legislature. Many believe the move is to prevent Kentucky's Democrat governor from appointing a Democrat senator to replace McConnell. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
And some good news for free speech on college campuses. The Supreme Court is siding with a Christian student in a free speech lawsuit against a Georgia college. The student was prevented from expressing religious views on campus. More on that by NTD's Allison Lee.
In an 8-1 decision, the Supreme Court ruled on Monday that a former college student can seek nominal damages from his school for violating his First Amendment right. This reversed 2 lower court decisions that called the case moot. Chief Justice John Roberts was the only one dissenting from the decision. Georgia Gwinnett College officials prevented Chike Uzwegbunam in 2016 from expressing religious views and handing out religious material in a free speech zone on campus. This after the student had obtained a permit to do so. In the court's opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas writes, "It is undisputed that Uzwegbunam experienced a complete violation of his constitutional rights when respondents enforced their speech policies against him." He also says because every violation of a right imports damage, nominal damages can redress Uzwegbunam's injury. To the contrary, Justice Roberts says this case is moot because Uzwegbunam is no longer a student at the school. An attorney for the organization that represented the student applauded the Supreme Court's decision. She says when public officials violate constitutional rights, it causes serious harm to the victims. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
And a Minneapolis judge delayed the trial of Derek Chauvin, the police officer charged with George Floyd's death. Jury selection will start Tuesday or later. Jury selection stalled because prosecutors asked the judge to add a third-degree murder charge against Derek Chauvin. He's already charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. In total, they'll choose 12 jurors and up to 4 alternates. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters marched near the trial site earlier today, saying they want justice for Floyd and for Chauvin to be convicted. One California man has been leading a road trip across the state to recall the governor since February. Here's NTD's David Lamb at one of the stops at San Francisco City Hall.
Organizers of the Recall Newsom campaign say they've accumulated enough signatures to trigger a special election later this year. The recall petition is approaching 2 million signatures with a deadline in less than 2 weeks. It partnered with the Recall road trip, which started from Santa Monica Pier and made its way to San Francisco today, with its last stop in Sacramento. Let's hear what supporters have to say.
The Recall road trip, the idea behind it was we wanted to go up the coast and collect signatures to help boost the efforts to recall Gavin Newsom.
Joe Collins, the man who's leading the road trip, says it's not Republican-driven.
We've been working with Democrats, Republicans, independents, and people who don't even identify with any party, but they're just tired of the way our state is looking.
One of the attendees has been speaking at the recall rallies since last year.
The reason we need to recall this guy is because America is about not one size fitting one type of person. It's supposed to fit everybody. It's supposed to work for everybody. And that's not happening under his leadership.
A young attendee was vocal about not being able to see friends from school.
And we need to get a good guy in there who actually has morals and principles. Because I doubt Gavin has any principles. I'm sorry, but it just has to be said.
Besseri says he wants an era of freedom where people are equal.
But we need to be honest and loyal, and we need to go back to school. That's our main thing. We all hate it. No one likes it.
One of the co-organizers of the petition says the next step is educating people about the special election process, which may happen in fall or summer.
There's a couple of days after the vote takes place. If the state chooses a new governor, then that person would be sworn in almost immediately.
NTD reached out to Governor Newsom's office for comment, but we did not receive a response. The final deadline for signatures is March 17th. Then the organizers have 30 business days to verify those signatures. After a review process, a special statewide election can be held that could pull Newsom out of office. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
New York's governor seems to be in more trouble than ever. Amid double scandals, Governor Andrew Cuomo is now facing an impeachment resolution from the state GOP. Republicans in the New York State Assembly announced an impeachment resolution against Governor Cuomo today. The State Assembly Minority Leader says they believe the time has come, claiming the governor has lost credibility and trust and that he's unable to lead the state. Cuomo is rocked by a double scandal. In his nursing home scandal, he's accused of underreporting virus deaths in nursing homes. In his sexual harassment scandal, at least 5 women have come forward to accuse Cuomo of behaving inappropriately toward them. Cuomo has vowed not to resign over the 2 scandals. To impeach him, there needs to be a majority vote in the state assembly and a 2/3 majority in the state Senate. New York City high schools are opening back up this month. The city's mayor said they have everything they need to bring them back strong but safe. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
After months of remote learning, the time for high schools to reopen in New York City is almost here. New York City's mayor said high schools will open their doors on March 22nd.
We're really excited about this. We are ready to go. We have all the pieces we need to bring high school back and bring it back strong. And, of course, to bring it back safely.
But not all of them are reopening. Approximately half of high schools will do in-person learning 5 days a week. New York City Schools Chancellor Misha Porter said she's thrilled her daughter will be one of the 50,000 plus students going back into classrooms.
My daughter is over the moon about being able to reconnect with her teachers in person, reunite with her friends, and just to be able to walk the halls of her high school, sit at her desk in a classroom, and rejoin the amazing learning community.
Schools report a virus positivity rate of 0.57%, making them some of the safest places in the city. Another date the mayor announced is September, when all schools will come back 100%.
This is a major, major step, and that's going to be an amazing day when we bring our kids back fully and we can just feel this city moving forward.
Teachers and staff members will enter their buildings and start preparing classrooms on March 18th. Once high schools reopen, they'll be given a 30-day supply of PPEs and deep cleanings every night. Students and staff will also be required to social distance and wear masks. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
Students missing classroom learning is not only a problem domestically, but across the globe. An exhibition at the United Nations brings awareness with hopes to get children back in school.
This school year, there were far fewer school buses on the road and many more sitting in parking lots as schools around the world shut down either completely, partially, or some combination of the two. Students around the world have had to adjust and cope with new ways of remote learning and when schools partially open, to stringent health screenings. This is not only challenging to parents and administrators, but it takes quite a toll on students as well.
We recognize that what a trying time this has been on children's mental health, psychosocial support needs, their physical and nutritional support.
I like school. Online school is very hard.
Last week, to call attention to the education emergency wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic and to raise awareness of the need for governments to keep schools open, UNICEF unveiled its Pandemic Classroom, a model classroom outdoors at the United Nations made up of 168 empty desks, each seat representing 1 million children living in countries where schools have been almost entirely closed since the onset of the lockdowns.
Our call is for that schools are the last public space to have closed. This is back a few months ago, but now are the first to reopen, recognizing the impact school closures had on children and the need for them to enter back into school.
With schools shut down or partially opened or a hybrid system, this has been a crazy year for students, parents, and faculty around the entire globe. But hopefully, with exhibits like the Pandemic Classroom at the United Nations, it will bring us one step closer to bringing attention to a critical issue and getting students back to where they belong, inside classrooms. Steve Gelati, NTD News, New York.
The wife of New York City's mayor is advising people to intervene if they see a hate crime taking place. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story.
The mayor's wife says it can be frightening when you don't know what to do, but according to her, everyone can learn. She shared a few tips. She says New Yorkers have to show up for their neighbors when they see violence or hate crime against Asian Americans. According to her, bystanders could ask the victim what time it is while the assault is happening in order to distract the attacker. But some point out that a few months ago she campaigned to defund the police in New York City and that stopping hate crime is the job of the police force, not the citizens.
It's foolish advice. It's being given by somebody who has no idea about police work. She has no idea about tactics, self-defense. You know, those thoughts just don't make any sense whatsoever.
Others question the timing of her statement. Last week, a middle-aged Chinese man died while acting as a Good Samaritan in Brooklyn. He intervened in a robbery and was stabbed to death as a result. According to New Yorkers we spoke with, it depends on the situation whether you should help someone or not.
Even if you have elite training, someone has a knife, there's very little you can do.
Should you save someone who's drowning? Yes, but unless they drown you, then you have two people that are, you know what I'm saying?
New York City will elect a new mayor this year after de Blasio served the longest amount of time he can, 2 terms. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
California's Bay Area decides to keep a temporary attraction as a permanent addition to the city. A large Ferris wheel was meant for an anniversary celebration, but it won over city residents. NTD's Eileen Ang has more.
San Francisco's Historic Preservation Committee decided to keep their Ferris wheel, or Skystar wheel, in Golden Gate Park for 4 more years. The original agreement for the 150-foot tall wheel was 1 year as part of the park's 150th anniversary. Those in favor of the wheel staying say it brings quality of life to the city's residents, more people to the city to promote local businesses, and money for the park.
It's been tough on kids. It's been tough on families. I think the wheel has been a symbol of hope during the time of closure.
Those against it staying say the generator makes too much noise. The committee addressed that concern by proposing to replace it with a quieter one. The wheel has been closed due to a surge in COVID cases, but has recently resumed operations on March 4th. People are already lining up for their turn.
We haven't been out to Golden Gate Park for over a year because of the pandemic.
Perfect day, beautiful view, and they're really quick about moving the line. The line's a lot longer now.
I like to bring the grandkids next.
It was a little scary, but it was a good ride.
It was pretty relaxing, yeah. Going up while they're loading it, you feel a little bit like, when's this thing going to get moving again? But yeah, once it goes, it's really smooth and just, it's totally chill. Great view of the city. You could see the headlands over Marin and the top of the bridge and everything. So yeah, it was cool.
On a clear, sunny day, riders can see the city, ocean, and Golden Gate Bridge at the top. The wheel is 15 stories tall and has 36 ventilated gondolas that are sanitized between each use. The committee will consider a permanent location for the temporary structure in the future.
When people have been in the park looking at the wheel not being able to turn, everybody has written to us and said time and time again, we remain hopeful that we will get through this COVID pandemic and can't wait to take a ride. And I think that's why we're here today.
Tickets are $18, and San Francisco residents receive a 15% discount. All San Francisco public school graduating seniors can get free rides this summer from June to September with a valid ID. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
The coronavirus outbreak is the latest wake-up call.
U.S. Senator Ben Sasse put it plainly, the Chinese Communist Party has lied, is lying, and will continue to lie about coronavirus to protect the regime.
In 5 to 10 years, we'll have virtually no manufacturing capacity left for generic drugs. And again, this is 90% of our medicines.
And the world should know, if Hong Kong falls, the whole world falls, okay? Because the Chinese Communist Party is the existential risk of humanity, period.
Since the CCP took power, 80 million people have died from its policies and political campaigns.
They're using our institutions and our norms and our values against us in ways that we hadn't necessarily envisioned towards their own authoritarian agenda.
From the party's great firewall in cyberspace, or to that great wall of sand in the South China Sea.
More repression, more unfair competition, more predatory economic practices, indeed a more aggressive military posture as well.
If we do not meet this threat now, it's going to define our century.
A new bride in Hong Kong says she's the only one left free after her family was torn apart by Chinese authorities. Her husband is now one of many detained there amid Beijing's sweeping arrests of pro-democracy lawmakers and activists.
And more on the situation in Hong Kong. A new bride who just had her wedding in January is now the only free person in the wedding photo. Her husband and friends have all been detained by the Chinese regime. 55 pro-democratic activists were involved in organizing the 2020 Hong Kong pro-democracy primaries. Beijing claimed the primaries are illegal and charged 47 of the activists for, quote, conspiracy to subvert state power. Nicole Yu's husband and their friends are among the 47 people. Last Thursday, Yu arrived at a detention center in Hong Kong. She was hoping to see her detained husband, Lester Shum, but he was already transferred to a prison, alongside with other 8 pro-democracy activists. Yu did not get notified until she had waited there for an hour. Yu posted on Facebook her wedding photo from January. She was with her husband and their friends. But now she is the only one who is still free. Yu wrote in the caption, on January 25th, I was so happy to take photos with you guys. We were laughing and saying we had a lot of fun after the wedding ceremony, but now I'm the only one left. The media's attention is turning towards China's economic growth. The country's 2.3% growth rate for 2020 has been widely touted by Western media, calling it by far the best performance of any major economy. The numbers show a slowdown from China's 6% or higher average in recent years. But a look at data from the country's National Bureau of Statistics shows some of the country's numbers don't quite add up. China's economy is mainly driven by a trio of factors: investment, consumer spending, and exports. The Chinese regime's latest report says its investment was up 2.9% in 2020 compared to 2019. But the country's investment, based on its fixed assets, is only over 51 trillion yuan. That's a major decrease from its 55 trillion in 2019. As for consumer spending, the regime reported a 3.9% decrease from last year. But the official report, coming in at 39 trillion yuan in consumer spending, is actually 4.8% less than 2019, a year marked by 41 trillion in spending. China's economic figures are notorious for proving inaccurate. There are even inconsistencies between official statistics as well. The regime has openly admitted to falsifying data, but usually blames the mistakes on local authorities. A New York Federal Reserve report shows that China's official numbers have become almost unrealistically smooth over time compared to authentic data, making them less believable.
A Chinese state-backed investment project worth $20 billion is crumbling. The funds were meant for the country's failing semiconductor industry. After struggling for a year, one of China's major microchip firms is asking employees to resign without compensation. NTD's Chen Han has more.
Major microchip maker Wuhan Hongshin Semiconductor, or HSMC, announced a full layoff of all its employees. The Chinese regime had poured nearly $20 billion into developing the company and its semiconductor industry. Stimulated by the government's subsidies and incentives, the industry boomed, with HSMC taking the lead. It was all part of an effort to combat U.S. sanctions, which blocked U.S. microchip technology from making its way to China. HSMC had said 10% of that investment was directly supplied by Wuhan's Dongxihu district. The company also claimed to independently own 14-nanometer chip technology, adding that it expected to be able to process 7-nanometer chips within a year. HSMC's projects were listed as major province-level projects in 2018 and 2019. But the company's problems soon started to go public, including a lack of funding and expertise, plus delayed projects. U.S.-based China affairs analyst Qin Peng says the Chinese regime had a hand in the industry's downfall.
As an innovative project, it actually requires a lot of time, personnel, and talented input. But these officials are all running after short-term political achievements, so they don't have the patience for that.
When the city of Wuhan finally took over HSMC, only a mere $1.5 million were left in its bank account. Soon after, local officials announced HSMC would be unable to continue production. After over a year in suspension, the possibility that the company could pick up where it left off has diminished, prompting the full layoffs. All staff members were required to resign by March 5th, but reports say hundreds of employees now refuse to leave. They say they're not satisfied with the terms of their resignation and that the company offered them no compensation plan or explanation. Former Huawei engineer Jin Chun says he expects a wave of more company collapses in China's semiconductor industry.
The CCP's totalitarian regime is not good for the high-end semiconductor industry. The regime is not suitable for technological innovation because it lacks a free and healthy cultural environment to promote it.
A report by the Semiconductor Industry International Association stated China would have the world's largest number of chip factories in 2021. But that prediction isn't looking good, as many related projects have already failed or been suspended, leaving much of the industry's billion-dollar equipment idle. Chun Han, NTD News.
The U.S. is strengthening its military presence in the waters of the Indo-Pacific. It's aimed at countering Communist China's increasing aggression in the region. NTD's Don Ma has more.
The U.S. is proposing a new tactic to deter Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. A new network of missiles would cost close to $30 billion over 6 years. As per Japan-based newspaper Nikkei, the proposal said the military balance in the Indo-Pacific has become unfavorable for the U.S. It argued that without U.S. deterrence, China will have the courage to take military action in the region. Head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Philip Davidson, warned that the greatest danger the United States faces in the region is the erosion of deterrence to China. He added, quote, "We must be doing everything possible to deter conflict. Our number one job out here is to keep the peace, but we absolutely must be prepared to fight and win should competition turn to conflict." The plan comes in light of China's increased military presence in the South China Sea. Beijing claims sovereignty over much of the region and has built artificial islands and military outposts there. It has laid airstrips on them in an effort to strengthen its military capacity. An international tribunal deemed China's sweeping territorial claims unlawful in 2016. The tribunal said that China had violated international law by endangering ships in the area as well as fishing and oil explorations. The proposal comes amid Beijing's plans to ramp up military spending. On Friday, China's Premier Li Keqiang announced a $200 billion investment plan for China's military for 2021. That's around a 7% increase from 2020's budget. As for the U.S., Congress approved a total defense budget of $690 billion for fiscal year 2021. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
Coming up, the founder of the UK's new Reclaim Party announces his run for London mayor. He's concerned that extreme political correctness or woke ideology is undermining society. And people in the UK are now allowed to meet with their friends outdoors, but there are strict rules. Find out more in just a minute.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years, even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year? Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
In the UK, the founder of the new Reclaim Party, Laurence Fox, announces his run for London mayor. We take a look at his motivation for running. NTD's Marianne Leatham has more.
Actor Laurence Fox is running for Mayor of London. Speaking to the Epoch Times programme, American Thought Leaders, he says he intends to reclaim free speech and a life free from lockdowns.
Similar to America, the United Kingdom is really struggling with their principle of freedom of speech. Without full and honest debate, we will end up in a place where the whole centre of gravity of democratic communication is shifted so heavily over to one side that it becomes very unstable.
He says woke ideology is affecting all areas of life, including the response to the pandemic. As mayor, he says he'd want to end the lockdown as soon as he's elected. Fox says that he's concerned about extreme political correctness undermining society.
One needs to accept that you have the right to offend and you do not have the right not to be offended. And it's through that conversation that mankind is going to actually progress.
He says while progressives have been focusing on the historical sins of Western countries, like slavery, they don't give as much attention to alleged genocide happening in modern-day China.
There's a desire to tear down what we are, rip it away and feel ashamed, but at the same time you'll allow a global superpower to commit horrendous acts of genocide against people, and it's fine. It's consistently inconsistent.
Fox gave Oxford University as an example of this inconsistency. The university is debating whether to remove a statue of Cecil Rhodes, a prominent figure in the building of the British Empire in South Africa. But last month, the Daily Mail reported that for a £700,000 donation, Oxford University named a professorship after a Chinese company with close links to the Chinese communist regime. The London mayoral election will be held on the 6th of May. Marianne Leatham, NTD News.
Former Brexit campaigner Nigel Farage says he's stepping down from frontline politics, but will remain active as an opinion leader.
Farage has in recent times been the leader of Reform UK, formerly known as the Brexit Party. He said on Saturday he'll quit as leader, but will still have an honorary position within the party. Having been an effective campaigning politician, Farage now wants to continue influencing British public opinion through media and social media. His top priority, to counter the infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party in the UK. He says the CCP's influence has been growing in Britain, but the British establishment has effectively sold out to it. He says a big educational campaign to inform the public of this worrying trend is needed, and he will fight for that. Farage is also concerned about the indoctrination of children in British schools. He says schools aren't teaching young people critical thinking. Instead, children are being politically propagandized. Campaigning for the health of oceans and encouraging people to plant more trees are also on his agenda.
Today is International Women's Day, and people around the world are celebrating. So how did this day begin and who started it? You may want to know before you join in the festivities. NTD's Grace Coulter has the details.
In recent years, International Women's Day has become increasingly commercialized, and today schools, businesses, celebrities, government officials, and media outlets are celebrating it. But many may be unaware that they're actually celebrating a Marxist holiday. In 1908, the U.S. Socialist Party established the Women's National Committee and adopted a proposal to mark an annual Women's Day. The first one was celebrated in 1909. Then in 1910, at the Second International Conference of Socialist Women in Copenhagen, Clara Zetkin, who was a German Marxist and communist leader, proposed the first International Women's Day, inspired by the U.S. A co-founder of IWD was Nadia Krupskaya, the wife of then-to-be Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin. Over the next several years, intermittent protests in March were led by socialist and communist women's groups across Europe. IWD was first celebrated in Russia in 1913, where it was widely publicized in the Bolshevik newspaper Pravda. Then on March 8, 1917, or February 23rd, according to the old Russian calendar, a strike of over 90,000 people, mostly female textile workers, took place on International Women's Day in Petrograd, Russia. The event is widely recognized as the beginning of the Russian Revolution, which brought Lenin to power. 1 week afterward, Pravda wrote, "The first day of the revolution, that is the Women's Day, the day of the Women Workers International." Revolutionary leader Leon Trotsky wrote, "February 23rd was International Women's Day and meetings and actions were foreseen, but we did not imagine that this Women's Day would inaugurate the revolution." The Russian Revolution began the chain of events that ultimately led to the killing of up to 100 million people under the banner of communism. In 1977, the United Nations adopted IWD, making it a mainstream global holiday. Reporting by Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Pubs, restaurants and shops remain closed in England, but there's a change to the rules for meeting in outdoor spaces. People can now meet with one friend who's not in their household to socialize. NTD's Jane Werrell reports.
Spring has just about sprung and restrictions are starting to lift a little. For outdoor socialising, it's allowed now to meet another person outdoors, in the words of the government guidance, for recreation. Previously, it was just for exercise.
It means you can meet one other person outside your household for a coffee or a picnic. The rule of 6 outdoors will come back later on in the month.
There's still a wait before things become more normal.
I'd rather wait and not see another lockdown, anything rather than another lockdown. Otherwise, I just have to go walking round and round this park forever. I might obviously see my wife every day, and that's lovely, but we're going to get together with our kids and our grandkids, and we'll have to wait another 3 weeks for that.
We're really happy to meet friends now instead of just talking on the phone and Zooming, to be together in person.
Woke up and felt exactly the same this morning as I did yesterday morning. I've had the vaccine, I've had coronavirus.
I think government has done all it can, and we just have to be patient and take it, one step at a time. So slowly looking at dates, looking at when the restaurants will open and all the rest.
Pub gardens and outdoor dining are set to return in mid-April. Before that, the rule of 6 comes back on March 29th outdoors, so 6 people can meet, or 2 households are allowed to meet outside even if their total number comes to more than 6. That's when outdoor sports will start too. The hope is for all legal limits on social contact to eventually be relaxed by June the 21st. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
And just ahead, traditional piano making was almost lost, but it seems like the business is coming back to life thanks to changing habits. Dancing horses try to keep up with training during the lockdown. They're working hard and waiting for the day they can perform for the public again. Stay tuned to find out more. The last traditional piano maker in Britain is seeing a surge in sales while people are stuck at home. Workers there now hope the 200-year-old tradition will survive and be passed on to future generations.
A surge in demand for pianos during lockdown might be reviving an old tradition. At one time, there were more than 350 traditional piano-making factories in Britain. Now there's only one. The company's managing director says it's important the master craft isn't lost.
You just have to do it by feel, by touch, and that's the craft of building a piano, or really the art of building a piano. 200 years of tradition and 200 years of knowledge. It would just be tragic if that was lost forever.
A small team of workers here is keeping the craft alive from a converted barn. Each piano is made by hand, strung with 230 strings for a unique British tone. Each one takes around 5 months to complete.
I've been here just under a year now, and I think this is the third piano I've strung. And it's just really, it's really great to see it from start to finish.
Once the piano is built and strung by hand, it is put through a machine called the basher, which plays in the piano, pressing every key more than 5,000 times. Thanks to our different lifestyles during the pandemic, it seems the age-old British craftsmanship of piano building may have been saved.
Much of France is under lockdown, and artists are using the time to rehearse. That includes horses. They and their riders keep up the training for the moment they'll perform on stage again.
The castle of Chantilly near Paris has many stories to tell. One story is about its famous horse stables, which are the largest in Europe. King Louis XIV's grandson built the great stables in the 1700s. According to legend, he loved horses so much he thought he'd reincarnate as one, so he built stables worthy of his rank. Around 3 centuries later, horses still live within these walls, with a daily schedule regular as clockwork.
7 a.m., that's their first meal. I have him walked, then I have them walked. They just got out of bed, so that's a warm-up.
After a walk in the forest around the castle, the horses are ready for training. Dancing training.
Horses are dancers, high-level athletes. As you see, I'm asking her with my feet to perform a warm-up exercise where she has to cross her legs.
After 3 years of training, it's showtime. The horse will be able to perform with a rider in a small circus. That's the goal for the 27 horses, donkeys, and ponies. Bename's father founded the Horse Museum here, and she follows in his footsteps, carrying on the centuries-old tradition of horse mounting.
The princes were being taught the art of war in the 18th century, the art of hunting. This was a traditional teaching, as was the horse racing tradition in the 19th century.
She said, although the traditions remain, it's different training horses to perform. She said her family also got help from famous American horse trainers like Pat Pirelli and Monty Roberts.
Horse dancing is quite recent. Only the elites did it for some time. Horses have to be confident and trust their riders. There is a strong bond between us. We get to like each other. We spend some time together. Some think they're stars. They also have a personality of their own that we need to go with, so we take advantage of it when we create our shows. We consider each horse's feelings for it. Every horse has a beauty of his own that we showcase.
According to her, some horses are happy to be in the limelight. With lockdown restrictions, the horses haven't seen their audience for about 6 months. The team at the stables hopes they'll be back on stage in April. David Vivez, NTD News, Paris.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephania Cox.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.